Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Back to Me podcast. And you know that every week we talk about really taking care of yourself and that it's actually a good thing to take care of yourself. It will, make your life so much better in the long run. And I get to talk to amazing people, which is part of the reason I do this because I'm doing this for me, back to me, plus you and them and everybody, I can't help it. But today I am talking to Jeanne Gallagher and Curiosity Seeker. I think that's a fabulous title, Curiosity Seeker. And you also have a podcast that I was on. So everybody go and check out my website where you can go and listen to Jeanne's podcast, Discover Rising Tides, because that was super fun. Jeanne, welcome. So good to see you again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It was really a blast having a conversation with you on my show. And it's funny for me to be on the other side of the questions here too. So
I know. We were just saying, she's like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, I know you're usually the host, but today you get to talk all about
usually
you.
in control.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when we go into my show, there are no questions. There is no script. And I have no idea where it's going to go. And I'm really okay with that. And so
Same
here we
here.
are.
And this is the same here. What's going to happen? Oh my goodness. I don't know.
I have no idea.
But before we do anything else, because the thing that I always am interested in first, and I just find it fascinating, is where you are now, and what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about taking care of yourself, which is one of my favorite topics, as you know. What drew you into this world of coming around and talking about this and helping people with this? It's that's a good way to introduce yourself too.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because a lot of people would identify with the evolution of who we are. And if you had mentioned, 10 years ago, podcasts weren't as well known as they are today. But if you had mentioned that we would all be in this digital world and having these great conversations with people that enhance and enrich others and enrich ourselves too, I wouldn't have imagined that. But I also wouldn't imagine where I am business-wise either. So it's one thing, one life event and life happenings that build on each other, that create where we are. And at the point that I'm at now, it's really exciting because I want to know what that's going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. And I haven't really thought about that before. And I think it might be just because I've finally gotten to a point where I think I have a vision.
That's cool. But
yeah,
it's like as that evolution happens, did you have some weird event that kind of drove you into that, or?
I don't know. That's a great question. So I think life drives us into that. So I wear two hats. First of all, I do have Discover Rising Tides podcast, and it's been around for a couple of years. And I have the privilege of talking with intriguing women like yourself, entrepreneurs, and learning about their journey and understanding, what do you do? How did you get to where you are? The journey is the most important part because that's what drives where we are today, and where we are tomorrow and 5 years from now is going to be directly pivoting on what how we're showing up today. But through the podcast, I do talk with incredible women and understand their journey. Where are they? How do they show up for others? But then how do they show up for themselves? And how does the outdoors play a part in that? So that's my fun project. And as a career or as a business owner, I am a financial advisor. I do have my own company and I am independent with that. And what I didn't expect is that my podcast would direct my business. I didn't think they were connected. I know, right? I had no idea. And so what happened is the podcast gave me an outlet to understand myself, how important the outdoors is to me and my well-being and others around me, because I get kind of cranky when I'm not outside. But it also directed, I've been an advisor for, 18, 19 years, for a really long time. And I've always thought, gee, I'd like to know if I have a niche. What area because I help families and I help individuals and I do all of that. And I love having conversations with people and helping them figure out where they are today and helping them create goals and whatever that looks like. But I've been always wondering, well, if somebody says, well, what's your niche? I'm like, well, I help families. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But it wasn't coming. I love that, but it felt like it was missing something. It felt almost two-dimensional, not three-dimensional. And what the podcast and talking to so many women, it's helped me find where I really need to be in my space, which is unexpected. And so what I've done is I've created a Pathways to Financial Independence for Women program, which is module based. And in this world of post-COVID, it can be virtual, right? And so it gives me an outlet to help create a safe space to have vulnerable conversations.
Right.
And part of wellness is being outside and eating right and taking care of yourself and listening to all of that and creating an environment for you. But then there's this other side that people are uncomfortable talking about because it's very personal. And that's where my professional side of my world comes into play. And I'm really excited that I really, after so long, can identify with my focus and helping women, especially. Do I help men? Of course I will. Of course I'll help everybody.
Exactly.
But the focus of the women piece is important because for so many years we haven't, as the female part of the population, haven't been in control of our things. And so there comes that self-confidence is what I think of. And self-confidence comes with education and support and resources. And so that's where that comes into play. And there's so much commonality between what I do on both sides, because what I do is I ask questions and I talk to people and I really help delve into the areas really based upon the conversation that we're having. And that's fun. I love talking to people.
Right.
I love talking.
I know. It's so awesome. And I love how the both of what we do kind of, it's like they align. It's a similar but different because our backgrounds are different, really, is the only way I can describe it, right? Because I know some of those conversations, like there is that nature thing. I just finished a season of teaching kayaking out in Georgian Bay and guiding trips, right? Like, let's go out into nature, friends. And
I should have put my kayak picture behind me instead of the rowing picture. So
right, it's all
I took
good.
this picture on the water, actually.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I actually like your background. I'm just kind of watching it. For people who are listening to the podcast, you can go over to YouTube to see the picture. But is like one of the areas that I just work specifically with women as well, which is why we align so well, even though, yes, totally work with men, no problem. But that money aspect is one of the major components that I think people, especially women, maybe are not. I mean, I'm talking generational wise, like current generation, probably no problem because they've grown up with that. But we're recording this in August, even though it's coming out in November. And today I always look up whatever the holidays are and the history. And it was on this day in 1820 that the first woman could vote, and she wasn't still allowed to vote country. She could vote in her state in Wyoming. And it was just because her governor said, yeah, women can vote in the state elections. And I'm like, what? Yeah, just makes my hair light on fire. Because I just think about, like, historically, there is reason for the fact that we are uncomfortable with it still, as for some people. And empowering people is so important because financial is part of the self-care aspect of it. And you were talking about, your hip. We do have the physical aspect and we have the emotion, and we have the relationships that we choose to have around us and all the things that we choose to do. And I love that you can ask those questions in a place for people to feel like they can explore those things if they haven't explored them before.
Yeah, I do.
And yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important. And so creating that space, but also the resources piece. So one thing that I learned, and life leads us to where we are, good, bad, and ugly, right? But you mentioned my hip. So back in March, I had my right hip replaced. Never had surgery before. And because I had the best resources available, and that resources came from obviously from the doctor's office, but even before that, before surgery, I had the best resources available to me to understand how to safely keep my body strong going through the surgical process, and having the resources. Our medical system is a little goofy. For some reason, I had the most nurturing. The doctor's office was phenomenal. Anybody in New Hampshire, I split my time between California and Maine, but anybody in New Hampshire that needs a resource for a hip or a knee or a shoulder, King and Parsons, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So, but it was such a different environment. But they gave me the tools, and they gave me the resources, and they gave me the ability to develop courage through this process. And then coming out of that, I had the strength training and the resources afterwards. But what that also taught me is that it was a very vulnerable situation going through something like that, when you are uncomfortable. And then you go through a fixing problem, and then you find out that I can't lift my leg.
Right.
I had no idea that would happen. You mean just raising my knee is impossible? Impossible. 1 inch off the ground, and the PT guy says, "That's a great job." Like, are you kidding?
I know, right?
Well, your expectations and my expectations are way off, and mine are really way off. But they gave me the tools and the education and the support. And I think that really, it taught me some things that helps me in my business. And it taught me some things that helps me in my podcast and communications too. And you can come out of something like that stronger than when you went in, but you have to put the work in. It just doesn't happen by magic.
Right.
Those silly exercises are really important.
I know. And it's funny how many experiences in life are like that, but we don't often get it until it's our physical body that we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. I mean, I did the same thing. I did a little podcast episode because I fell in December and when I was on vacation, and I broke my wrist. And I did an episode called What I Learned from Falling Down. And then I don't even think I've recorded this one yet, because it's been in my head. Is the real lesson came afterwards. And it's going to be called What I Learned from Getting Up. And it's because,
Perfect.
You fall down and you deal with that immediate thing, but it's the afterwards that you think life should go back to normal. But no, because there's still all the things that happened. Like, I actually couldn't even close my hand for a few months. It's like I couldn't open a jar because my hand was too weak. Same as you trying to lift your leg. It's like, wow,
right.
What do you mean I can't do this? What do you mean there's after
amazing.
effects? Yeah.
That's amazing. And yeah, what's amazing too, I think also, is that what we eat, and especially at a certain age, what we eat and our activity level is incredibly important. And going through this process also, it really slapped me in the face, really realizing that, over the next 20 years or 25 years, what do I want that to look like? And I have to put the work in. I had to put the work in to recover from this surgery. And that was just a prime example of, I have to be committed to myself. It's so easy to do things for others. And
Oh,
it's
yes.
so difficult to do things for ourselves. And you have to realize what that really looks like. And that looks like, in my opinion, I'm not a health person. I'm not any sort of a health professional. I have a nutrition coach. She is the coolest thing in the whole wide world because honestly, she's my daughter. But she's really smart and she's really good at what she does. And both my kids are very active. And for years, I'm like, well, I'm just going to ride my bike and be fine. I'm going to go to yoga and 5 days a week. And that's all I really need. And they've been beating it into me. You need resistance training. You need resistance training. I'm like, oh gosh. Oh, well,
Guess what?
getting ready for this surgery, I found that resistance training and weight training and implementing my diet and going into something like this in a strong position paid off immensely on the other side.
Right. And it's true. I think about all the aspects of life. I mean, I think it becomes more, I don't want to say urgent, but almost in a way more urgent as you get older when you think, oh gosh, I better start paying attention to this now, right? Because when you're young, you can just go, I'll be fine. Everything will be fine. I got lots of time to figure it out. Then you realize, actually, I don't have as much time to figure it out. And doing that intentional, what do I want whatever the next phase is of life to look like? And it's true, it's not one size fits all. Like I've seen people who say, oh, I've been doing this workout forever, it's going to serve me forever. I'm like, well, no, because you're different at every kind of cycle of life. And I even think about yoga. I remember it was quite controversial at one point because Ashtanga power yoga was the thing that everybody did. And I attended a workshop where the instructor actually had the gall to say, at later points in life, Ashtanga doesn't serve you. And everybody went, oh, because you need something different. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? But
I'm having challenges with that right now. So, but I
yeah,
had to let some things go. I have a fairly powerful yoga practice. Yin is the hardest thing that I could ever do in the yoga world because it's hard for me, really, really hard. However, I learned that there are certain things that now that I have an apparatus in me that I have to let go.
yeah,
And there is an ego conversation that can be quite challenging,
yeah.
but I'm coming to terms with that.
Yeah, so we're balancing that, what should we do to plan out our next 20 years? And then that taking care, like you made the comment, because it is true of a lot of women, everybody else's priorities are first versus your own. So what's your course called again? Oh my God. What's it called?
Pathways to financial independence for women.
Does that involve, so does that incorporate also this like wellness aspect? I feel like this is like
No, but
a
it partners
full,
well with a wellness person. Yeah.
right?
So it really is all financially based. We do talk about our relationship with money, but the wellness piece, it partners. I did it honestly to be utilized in two different ways. I'm glad you brought that up. To
Yeah,
utilize with me just teaching the topic, but also to be able to be combined with a wellness practitioner, health transformation facilitator, wellness person, whatever that happens to be,
right,
to combine the full picture, because we are a full picture. And if we talk about one thing and don't cover the other, that lack of knowledge in that other spot is going to leave some gaps.
right. And is it general? So your course on discussing money, because I know you're in
Mm-hmm.
the US, but I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
that it's like just a broad conversation of relationship with money.
It is. It is. Yeah. It's primarily. I'm a little bit limited because of my licenses that I do have to talk to people in the U.S. But yes, but it is broad.
So can
Mm-hmm.
people outside the US use your course?
I I think so. That's a great question, Heather. And I have to double check because we have the world of compliance on our side.
Yeah.
But there are pieces that definitely can. Yeah.
Yeah. The compliance is to keep, everybody safe from the people doing bad things, but it also shackles the people who are trying to do good
Oh, it
things.
does. It does. It's just part of my world, and I'm used to it.
Right.
And that's really why, I started the Discover Rising Tides podcast, because it gives me an opportunity to meet some really great people, and it's outside of the constraints of my other business, and that's how we were able to have a conversation as well.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much talking with people like yourself. Then the things that I learned from these conversations, I can bring back to my conversations on the business side as well, which is really, it's enriching for me selfishly.
Right.
And
There's
so,
nothing
yes,
selfish with enriching yourself. Remember, this is back to me.
it is. That's right. That's right.
Let's take that out of our vocabulary. There's no selfish. There's no selfish.
Well,
And
what's funny that you brought that up, because that is exactly what I was talking about before, because we as females and nurturers are always going to put the other person first. And so there's a prime example of, it's okay to look for ways to enrich ourselves, because ultimately it is going to affect others.
right, if you can enrich yourself and do those things to keep yourself the way you want to operate the next 5, 10, 20, however many years it is. I plan on going, how old am I now? 15, I've
Yeah, I
probably got
know.
another 50 odd years I plan on. So it's what do you want that to look like? And I guess that's
Mhm.
not just physically, like think about all of the aspects of someone's life. And that's what my thing is, right? I do look at physically, but I do also look at your community and your money and your job and all of
Mm.
those things. Like, think about all of those things. What do you want that to look like ultimately? And what decisions are you making for that? And
Community is really important.
right? And it's so amazing
Mhm.
that you had such a great experience with your new, now that you're bionic. Um,
Yes.
dun, 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 dun.
Exactly.
I can't remember the theme song, but
Yeah. A $6 million man,
right, or once they
the
got to the
bionic
bionic
woman,
woman, she
the
cost
bionic
way
woman,
more than he did,
Jamie Summers. Yes.
right? She cost way more than he did, so they didn't even
Yes.
name the price. And then the bionic dog too. I can't remember the dog's name, but my goodness, now we're aging ourselves. But it's true, like, and you allowed yourself the time to take care of yourself, right? And to
Mhm.
recover. So you didn't put yourself in a compromised position saying, oh, I'll just do this, even though in the long run it's probably going to hurt me because you're more important than my recovery time.
Yeah, and that requires modifications. There are things. So before surgery, I had a 4 or 5 day a week yoga practice, and I
Yeah.
went to CrossFit 4 days a week. And in each of those environments, I was able to modify. So there are some things that I couldn't do, and so because physically the parts just didn't work.
Right.
And for a long time, I had just plowed through that, and it was uncomfortable. And then when I discovered that actually, no, I really do have a physical problem that needs to be physically be fixed. I can't just ignore it away. But I also was in an environment that encouraged modifications. You can't do it this way, can't do this one thing, but I can do this while you're doing that.
Right.
So, and I had the people there watching my form and watching what I was doing and providing the resources to ensure that I was in a safe environment. But what that did is I stepped into surgery strong. Even, and what's interesting is coming out of surgery, and you might have noticed this with your wrist too, And especially because I had been dealing with hip issues that were progressively getting worse over the course of 1.5 to 2 years, just deteriorating. And, but I really didn't want to know that that was happening. I ignored it for a really long time.
You just like plugged your ears, la, 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 la.
Yeah. Until it goes, I can't hike anymore. Oh, now I have a problem. It has really, really made an impact on my wellness, and my well-being is impacted by this thing. Now I need to do something. But what's interesting, and so since the beginning of March in surgery, and I actually traveled from California to New Hampshire for surgery. And then I traveled back after surgery through that process. And what's interesting is that I'm still going to PT now. And there are some areas that the muscles are still rebuilding because they were so dormant for so long, and needing to take the time for that, for people to teach me and ensure that I do the exercises.
Yes, people are right? Terrible at doing their exercises. I was a massage therapist, right? And people are terrible.
They're so important.
And especially if it's like, you might have got to the point where everything seems to be working and you would have stopped and just left those muscles being dormant, which in the long run would have probably caused more problems.
Well, that's interesting. My PT person said yesterday, she said, I'm sorry to be so picky, but you're functioning fine. You could walk away and you'd be fine doing all the things you want to do. However, there's this room for growth, muscle growth, and that will make even more of a difference. I'm like, okay. And this is almost the hardest part. Yes, I couldn't lift my leg the day after surgery, and that I thought that was difficult, but it was very obvious. I really had to work at it. But when you are I'm better than I was before, but I'm almost 100%. That last 90% of the work seems harder. And if you can, but the life lesson there is you can apply this to everything that you do.
Yeah.
When you're working at 80 to 90% capacity and you're functioning just fine in whatever that happens to be, whether it's spiritually or physically or financially, and you're doing great. That last 10 to 20% is the most important and the hardest to overcome.
And I think that's because
that's my observation this week.
I think that's because we're so used to settling, right? This is good enough.
Yes.
This is good enough. Or because maybe we don't think that, I mean, we could go into the whole, I don't deserve to have 100%, but it's like, oh, that's because the increments are so slow. We love that instant gratification, the pings, the bings, I don't know, lights and camera and action. It's like those ones are the slog that it's like, you just do it because you know that ultimately the prize will be amazing. And stop settling, right? That's such a beautiful insight. Oh my God. You gotta write that one
so
down.
That came that one was something that I've been noticing, and so, but it really showed up this week for me because I was so excited when I went to my PT person yesterday. Yesterday, because I ran and I haven't physically been able to do that, and my body let the function happen. It wasn't beautiful, but my body was allowing it. And then the PT person says, that's fantastic. However, this is why it could be better. Oh, God damn it.
God damn
it. But she was right. And then when I was in CrossFit this morning, the coach said, do the exercise to the best ability that you can. Don't slough it off. If it's not correct, slow down and do it correctly. And if it's not correct, redo it. And think about how you do things in the rest of your life. If you just slough it off and you do a half-assed job, are you really getting the job done? And I'm like, wow, this is a life lesson right here this
Right.
morning.
I heard a coach say at one point, how you do some things is how you do everything.
That's exactly what she was getting at.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's easy for people to, because I'm a big proponent of having people take responsibility for their lives. Like, you are making the decision, own it. If you want to do it halfway, then do it halfway, but don't blame somebody else for it. Right. And I think
Own the half.
it's a
Own the
scary,
half that's not done.
yeah, it's a scary thing to own the half that's not done. You know, it's easier to blame somebody else. But ooh, those are good life lessons. And how did you do in CrossFit?
I did good. I did well. So I still have to modify some things, and modifying is grand. There's
Modifying
nothing
is
wrong with
life.
modifying. Totally. And I'm also, I'm in an environment where there's people that have been doing this for years, and if I didn't have all of these things going on, I would still be in a modification. So it is okay. Everybody needs to have the space to grow, and what modification does is it allows us the space to grow and get better, and that is applied to every area in our life.
Right. That's amazing. So you're just reminding me. So I still teach yoga. I've been teaching yoga for 20 years now. And I have evolved to the point where when I start class, I say, there's 2 rules, only 2 rules. The first rule is you have to breathe. The second rule, don't hurt yourself. After that, I'll tell you to do stuff, but you can do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt yourself. Right. So giving people the permission to choose, because sometimes in those classes and in those situations, people are like, oh, they're doing a headstand, I better do a headstand. No, that's
The
not
ego
necessary.
shows up
Yeah,
with
big time. I like actually that online the ego doesn't show up as much because it's just you watching the screen. You are
That's
not
very true.
in that room, although I can't get my hands on you, but there is advantages and disadvantages to everything. So where do people find all this fabulousness, all this wisdom, all this Jeanne curiosity seeker epicness?
You can find me in 2 different places. DiscoverRisingTides.com is the website for the podcast, and you can find that on YouTube and social media. But going to the website is fine, and you'll see the shows, including Heather's show, on all of those. And you can find the podcast wherever you find your podcast, Spotify, and other places as well. And it's also out on, if you're on internet radio, K-Fred Radio is out there. That's K-Fred. Yes. Fred is creating an amazing platform for many people. And I can also be found at seasidesolutions.net. That's the financial side of the business. My contact information is listed on both of those places, and feel free to reach out, ask questions. I'd be glad to. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, let me know. If you have other questions on the other side of my business, anytime.
Right. That's all going into the show notes. So people know,
Perfect.
Don't worry, you don't have to write it all down. It'll be in the show notes. If you're driving, pay attention to the road. And right. And it's true. I love being able to provide lots of resources. And you are on Spotify, because I have a playlist in my Spotify of all the podcasts I've been on. So I've just added you to my playlist. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
It's a good way to keep track of, if people are looking for podcasts you've been on, you're like, here's my playlist. So,
that's a wonderful idea.
I know, brilliant, right? Somebody else gave it to me. I'll give Angel Tukey.
It's now yours, so
I give her full credit for that. So we've talked about lots of amazing things, and I'm very excited because I wrote down the last 10% is the most important. When you see me looking over here, I'm writing down notes. But I always give my guests a final word of wisdom. You can have more than one word. Do you have a final mic drop for people?
Be brave enough to listen to yourself.
That's brilliant. Mic drop. That's so good. There you go, friends. Nothing else to say. Jeanne, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me.
It's a pleasure as always.
It was good to see you again, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
We will. Thank you.
Friends in podcast land, you have yourself an amazing day. Send us some comments. I'd like to know what your last 10% is that you're struggling with. Share this with someone who you think could probably use a little nudge. And of course, sending love to you. We'll see you next time.